Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my studio. This is Paint with Lovejoy. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you're here for the first time, awesome. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you're here for a second, third, or fourth time, thank you so much for coming back and continuing your painting process. In today's painting, this is going to be a Georgia O'Keeffe painting and a bit more of, I guess we would call it an advanced beginner, because we're going to go work on more wet on wet blending and work in smaller sections and move our way across the canvas. So if you are a first time painter, I would recommend that you try some of my other videos geared towards first time painters, get comfortable with the process, and then when you're a little more comfortable with holding the brush and mixing your paint, then try this video, because it might be a little too much for this being your first painting. So with that being said, this is going to be diving into more of the wet on wet blending and more brush control for these Georgia O'Keeffe paintings. So what you're going to see in the description box below is a link to a supply kit. And in that supply kit is all the paint, brushes, canvas, everything that you need to get started painting for this project. What you're also going to see in the description box below is a link to what I call a traceable. And a traceable is a way to get that initial composition on your canvas before you start painting. And you would transfer it using carbon paper or graphite paper. You also have the option that you can pause the video where that traceable image shows up and draw what you see on your canvas. So there's information in the description box below. Whichever method works for you, make that happen, and then pick up the video for the painting portion. With this video and any video that I create, you have full permission to deviate from the instruction. If you want to change out colors, if you want to do something different, it's just important that you actually paint. All right, and no matter what you do today, just have fun, get lost in the process of painting, and just kind of forget about the world for a little bit. So enough talking, let's jump into the painting process. Alright guys, it's going to be another fun Georgia O'Keeffe painting for my advanced beginners. You're going to get comfortable with brush control, your pressure, and blending. So grab your supplies, transfer your traceable to your surface, and as always, make sure you take your progress photos. Now on mine, I went over the traceable with a black Sharpie marker for those of you that are going to draw what you see at home. If you utilize the traceable, you do not have to do the black Sharpie marker. So to get started, we're actually going to be working on the background, and we're putting in a base layer of white so that way we can blend our light and medium shades of gray into this base. I am using student grade paint, so I'm applying a little bit thicker so it stays wet a little bit longer, and again gives me that nice base to blend the shades into. If you happen to be using paint that is that dries very quickly, I would recommend kind of just watching the video and then taking the background in sections and work in smaller spaces so that way you can accommodate the dry time of your paint. So as always, adjust what you need to for the tools and the variables that you have on hand. Now, like I said, I am filling in that space with that white paint, and we're going to be working on our brush pressure today as we do blending, and our brush control. So working in smaller little spaces. So we'd be doing little dabs, almost kind of like pointillism, to where you're kind of squishing that new color into the base. Or you could do hold your brush at a 45-degree angle and kind of smooth in the color into that base. So again, try both methods and just kind of find what's comfortable. So here, making that light gray, and because we're putting it into the base of the white, it is going to change colors a little bit. So if your gray is a little bit darker or lighter than mine, that's okay. So I want you to just observe the place where I put each of those shades of gray, and then we're going to be mixing it into the base and the general shape that I make. On this particular one, compared to Georgia O'Keeffe's original, I believe I did intensify the shadows in the background just so we had a little bit more depth going on. But if you're looking at her original piece, feel free to mimic either one. So as we're blending this gray into that base white, again, just kind of using light pressure, observe how the shade changes, the direction of your brush strokes, just kind of how everything is evolving. You can add more white if you need to, or like I'm doing right here, I'm actually adding a little bit of a darker gray. Um, so again, just kind of whatever you need to do to adjust for your painting. Now, as we go through today's painting, I'm going to recommend that every now and then you do get out of your chair, look at it from a distance of 5 to 10 feet away, and some of this shading will make a little bit more sense. So if you look at it from that distance, and maybe you see a sharp line, when you go back to your painting that you need to kind of soften that line. So looking from that distance is a good way to kind of just gauge your process and kind of see it the way a new viewer, your audience will be looking at your painting. And part of art, you're constantly changing. So what you do in today's painting, you're going to learn a lot. If you paint this again, you may approach it a little bit differently, and that's okay. That is part of the creative process, constantly evolving and growing your own skills. All right, so do pause the video, take those progress photos. We're going to go for a medium blue, and that's about a 1-to-1 ratio of blue and white. Again, if yours is lighter or darker than mine, totally okay. And just filling in these little sections where the sky is kind of poking through on the clouds for the O'Keeffe painting, and just kind of filling in. I believe I did move down to the small pointy brush, so feel free if you need to go back and forth between different brushes, use what you need. If you even feel like finger painting, especially when you're doing some of the blending, it's really tactile and it's actually a lot of fun. So give yourself permission to do that. All right, if you're going through this whole process, hopefully you're not painting as fast as I am, because this is a sped up video, but remember to breathe. And it looks like here I forgot a few places where to put the white on the canvas and even the shades of gray. So if you need to go back and adjust anything before we move on to the next step, go right ahead and do that. And that's also part of the painting process. We don't get everything right from the first get-go. So it is kind of a back and forth process for yourself. All right, so now moving down into those mountains, we're going to put a base of raw sienna on there, pretty thick, and then we're going to be blending in a shadow and then blending in a highlight. We are keeping our palette relatively simple for today's painting. We've got red, yellow, blue, black, white, and raw sienna. So not crazy limited, but still kind of keeping our colors kind of under control or limited. Again, I'm using student grade paint, so you probably can kind of see that I am holding that brush at that 45-degree angle, so that way I can apply it a little bit thicker. This helps with more opaque coverage. If you want to, you can do 2 layers of this. I do not do that in this video, but you can on your painting at home if you want more opaque coverage. So now for our shadow values, we're actually mixing the raw sienna and the red, and a little bit of red goes a long way. And it is okay if that maybe you apply it to the canvas and you realize that maybe you need a little more red, maybe you need a little bit more raw sienna. It is okay to adjust your color mixture after you've made a few marks on your painting and then go back and apply. So as we go through this process, again, we're putting wet paint into wet paint. I want you to play with light pressure as you blend this and just kind of focus on what it looks like to blend this new color pigment into your base color, how it diffuses, how it feels. It's kind of a bit of a slight dragging method as you squish this new color into the base. Again, this is sometimes where finger painting can be kind of nice, but each time that you paint, your muscles in your brain are taking in a lot of information about what it's like to hold the brush, the pressure, what it looks like. So be kind to yourself as you're going through this process. So doing the same thing on the opposite side with a highlight, we're using yellow for the highlight. And again, the lighter colors get eaten up pretty quickly in this wet on wet blending. So you're probably going to be rather generous with the amount of yellow that you put on the mountains, but not move your brush nearly as much. The more you move your brush to mix it into the base, the more it's going to diffuse, and you're going to lose a little bit of that highlight. So again, apply your paint rather generous for the yellow for your highlight and not as much movement for blending it into the base. All right, another place to pause the video, take your progress photo. This is coming along nicely. We're going to move into the skull. So we're going to start with a light raw sienna, and that is white with some raw sienna. And we're going to do the left antler first and just kind of build on the same skills that we were using for the mountain. We're going to put this base of light raw sienna on the whole antler, going right over the traceables, again applying it kind of thick. I am using that small pointy brush. And then we're going to put a shadow on there, two shadows actually, and then we're going to put a highlight. Now, if you're finding that your brush is kind of shaky as you're going to apply the paint in these small spaces, that means you're holding your breath. So if you exhale as you touch the brush to the canvas, that is going to be of benefit for your process, and you'll be a little less shaky. You're doing a great job. Really proud of everybody who's painting at home. Please keep it up. Take classes and follow other videos from other instructors. Try to gain as much knowledge as you can for your creative outlets. All right, so we've got that base in there. Now we're going to be grabbing the raw sienna and again placing it in a few specific places. And then we'll go back, wipe the brush off, and then go back with that light pressure and blend this darker color into the base. Now again, as you are watching the video and applying it to your canvas, applying what you see, you are strengthening your power of observation, and that is a big part of the art process and really a big part of life in general. The more observant you are, just the more efficient and the better you can be at your own life. So being more observant in art will show up in other areas of your life. So here you can see where we grabbed a touch of black, and a little bit of black goes a long way. And we're basically just intensifying the shadows, going one step darker than the raw sienna. And again, you can see just tiny, tiny little brush strokes, almost just not really even squishing it into the base, but just smoothing it in there. And again, the more that you do this, the more your muscles will become comfortable with this process. So now clean that brush. We're going to go to white paint and put the highlight on, which is basically going to kind of be on the opposite side of where we put the shadows. And same thing, you're going to lay that white in there, wipe that brush off, and then with light pressure, just kind of push it into the base. And again, remember to get out of your chair and look at this from a distance to see how it's translating. All right, so going back to the other antler, same process, that light raw sienna, fill in that whole base in. Then we'll go with the same raw sienna, then the black, then the white. So you're getting really good practice with working in these tiny spaces and doing some controlled blending. Really, really proud of you guys. All right, and again, applying it thick, and if you have to mix your color 2 or 3 times and it's a little bit different, don't stress out about it, because like I said, you're going to be adding some shades, your darker, your shadows and your highlights on here. So now same thing, moving into the raw sienna, putting it in similar spaces compared to the other antler. And then again, wipe that brush off and go back in and just kind of soften that in. We're going to do the same thing with black again. And again, remember that a little bit of black will go a long way. So as we're working in these small spaces, you're realizing that small amounts of pigment can be rather powerful, and a little bit goes a long way. All right, so now adding that black, again, just placing it and then squishing it into the base. Remember to breathe. You're doing great. This is coming along very nicely. And if you do feel like trying this with watercolors, you can kind of follow along, but same thing, a little bit of pigment goes a long way when you're working with your watercolors. And I do recommend that you try different mediums just to kind of find what you like. All right, so now moving into the white, same thing as the other antler, just placing it in a few spots and then squishing it in. We're going to keep building on this process as we move into the skull. We're going to go for that light color and then put some darker shadows on there. Again, just getting you really comfortable with the process today. So going back to that light raw sienna, same thing. We're going to start filling in the skull and going right over those traceable lines. And since I did mine with the black Sharpie marker, I'm applying my paint kind of thick so that way it does compensate for that dark line. If you did just the traceable, you should have no problem covering that line, and it should not be visible by the time your paint is dry. And this is a sped up video, obviously, so don't feel like you have to keep the same pace as this video. Pause the video as needed, paint your part, and then just keep moving on. With these YouTube tutorials that are free, I really try to give you as much information as I can, but not have the videos be too long. It just makes it easier as I'm creating all of these. All right, so now moving into that raw sienna after we have the base of the light raw sienna in there. And again, you're noticing that I'm just doing little tapping marks, little overlapping dots, and just kind of creating the shadow, the darker space on this skull. So a little bit of brush maintenance as we go through this, especially kind of at this step. If you're noticing that your brush strokes are just getting wider and wider and it's harder for you to work in some of these small spaces, take a look at your brush. Do you have a lot of paint buildup on there? Do you have a lot of paint on your brush? And a lot of times when we get that buildup on there, it moves and expands the bristles. So wipe off that brush every now and then. You can fully clean it if you need to, and then go back and grab the appropriate color. Um, Painting's always kind of just a back and forth, and your variables are different each time that you paint. So now going in with the black, again, placing it where we want it, and then wiping that brush off and going back with light pressure to just kind of blend it in. As we work in these tiny, tiny spaces, a little bit goes a long way, and you don't have to do a whole lot of actual blending for it to be apparent as you look at the painting from a distance. So I'm really proud of everybody who has started off maybe never painting before, and you're realizing that you've enjoyed it after a few sessions that you've painted, and you keep pushing your skills. That is the biggest thing about art for anybody that's doing it, is constantly just keep stepping out of your comfort zone. Keep pushing your boundaries of what you're good at, what challenges you, where you're growing, because this is just how we get better at anything. And when you do it with art, we do have a kind of a nice visual documentation of that learning with all your final paintings. And if you take your progress photos, just that kind of keeps it in your awareness for you. But please keep pushing yourself with your creative endeavors. So now we're moving into the white, doing the same thing that we've done for most of the painting, putting some highlights on there. Observe the general place that you see that I put it, and maybe the shape that it makes, and mimic that on your canvas. All right, doing a great job, almost done. We do have a few of those flowers at the bottom to add, and just kind of touching up any last details. I think I could still see the black line on my painting, so just going over that. All right, so now moving into red for that flower that's right below um, the skull. Still using that pointy brush and almost just making little dash marks as I fill in this flower. We're going to kind of fill it with the red, and then we'll come in with a little bit of white and put a little highlight on there, and that will change it just a touch. But again, this does not have to be perfect. The flower to the right of it is going to be a yellow looking sunflower. So clean that brush really good. Again, my paint is student grade paint, so I am applying this yellow rather thick, so it is a bit more opaque. And if you happen to go over that center area or anywhere else, totally okay. You'll just apply your other color on top of it. All right, and a few little spots of yellow next to the red flower. And then now we're going to go for green. And I didn't put green on here, so we're going to make our own green, and that is yellow with a touch of blue. And you can change the intensity of your green if you want. And even here I realized I needed to go a little bit darker, so just added a touch more blue to make it a bit more of a spring green. There we go, a little bit darker. All right, and then going for some raw sienna for that center on the sunflower or the flower. But great job today, you guys. I'm really proud of you for painting. Please do not wait too long to do your next painting. Keep building on your skills. And here, just doing those final little touches of white. Again, observe what you see on here or the original O'Keeffe painting. All right, guys, great job. Have a great day. And until next time, cheers.
Hey guys, I hope your paintings turned out really nice. I have no doubt that Georgia O'Keeffe would be proud of you. I'm proud of you for painting at home. And it is okay to do this video more than once. You will strengthen those skills and get more and more comfortable with blending and doing some of those subtle transitions. So thanks again for practicing and continuing to evolve your skills. As you're uploading your videos to social media, please tag me at Paint with Lovejoy or hashtag Paint with Lovejoy, or even email them to me. I really like to see your guys' finished results, and then when I post those to social media, it encourages other people to jump in on the painting process as well. So you are a huge, huge help for getting other people to paint and for continuing the success of this channel. So please spread the word. If there's anything you want me to paint in the future, you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment in the comments below, and I do my best to respond to just about every comment on there. Like I said, I appreciate your support. So thanks again for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. Keep on painting, and I will see you for the next painting session. Cheers.